This NFL Week 18 injury news and updates and player prop targets edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to get a 50% deposit bonus of up to $1,000. We're also brought to you by Rhythm, the leader in data-driven picks and props. Get your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
Wilson, it as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be caught by Linton.
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast NFL Week 18. The final week of the NFL regular season is upon us. Of course, everybody is going to say it's flew absolutely by, but indeed, in fact, it always does fly by when we're talking about the National Football League. But joining me here to help me break everything down for the final week of the regular season, as far as all the injury news and updates, I got my guy here with me. It's the DJ Doc himself, Sebastian Fearon. Sebastian, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Ready to kick off 2025. And, the minor leagues of college football have given us quite the slate here, both today and tomorrow. So it makes the midweek blues without football a little bit nicer.
Yeah, inching ever so closer to the weekend. I know we got games starting on Saturday in the National Football League. Of course, college football playoffs going on, of course, as well. So it should be a fun week, I should say, as we ring in the new year for 2025. But we'll go through everything as we usually do here. I just mentioned that we should or wanted to cover the games that actually have some meaning to them this season. I'm not sure if, or I should say this final week of the regular season. Not sure if many people do care about some of the other toilet bowl games this week. But if there's anything significant, Sebastian will mention it. But I did want to touch on the big games that are happening this weekend. But before we do dive into it here, just want to quickly remind everybody to check out the SGPN app. All of our picks and podcasts, it's in one place, all for absolutely free. All you got to do is just type in SGPN in the App Store, and you'll see the SGPN logo pop up. Just do us a favor, download the app completely free. And like I mentioned, you'll get all of our picks and podcasts all in one place for absolutely free. All right, Sebastian, we got games starting on Saturday. All four teams, of course, in the AFC North will be battling it out here. Starting at about 4:30 Eastern Standard Time, we've got the Cleveland Browns. They are in Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Ravens laying 17.5 points in this game with a total of 41.5. Ravens looking to clinch the AFC North division here with the victory here. But what are we looking at for injuries as far as Browns and Ravens here, Sebastian?
Yeah, obviously, big game for the Ravens. Cleveland, it also a revenge game. Cleveland beat him earlier in the year with, I think it was a combination of DTR and Winston, and then I think Deshaun Watson. That might have been the game he got hurt in. So, this is a bit of a revenge angle. Cleveland, a little bit more of the beat up team. Wide receiver Cedric Tillman put on the IR. He's been out for a long time with a concussion. Definitely, hopefully he's doing okay, but he's been out for over a month. So they just shut him down for the season. Hopefully it's nothing too lasting as far as next season. There, cornerback Denzel Ward always seems to be injured, but does play through a lot. He was ruled out with a shoulder injury and unable to return last week. So we'll see if he's able to come back. Obviously their best cover guy there. And they got some running back problems in Cleveland. Pierre Strong is in the concussion protocol on a short week. That's never good. And then Jerome Ford, I know a guy that I liked, thought he had a good matchup. He got hurt early in the first half, came back for one play in the second half and couldn't do much. Looks like a high ankle sprain mechanism. So I really don't expect him to be out there. So, from the prop standpoint, that really just leaves Deonta Foreman, who was the leading rusher last week. He did get some good burn there. So something interesting, we'll kind of see. This is a little bit of a situation where Baltimore, it's tough to run on them. So maybe Foreman receiving or something out of the backfield there. For the Baltimore side, Justice Hill, he was missing practice with an illness, but he seems to be good to go. He's expected to play this week off his concussion as a nice kind of spell to Derrick Henry. especially in a game where it could be some blowouts. I know Justice Hill is a guy that I've played in the past because he gets some burn both in the run and the receiving realm, whether they're, in receiving when they're competitive or when it's a blowout. He will get some handoffs there when Henry's on the bench. And then Charlie Kohler looks like he's coming back for them. Third string tight end there. Good blocking tight end. He had a broken arm, but he's going to return to practice. So Baltimore definitely the healthier team. Cleveland a bit beat up, especially at the running back position.
We're still expecting DTR to be the quarterback here.
So the news just kind of broke that. Well, I don't know if it's breaking news, but him and Bailey Zappi are going to split time. I mean, can we just take a second? Like, we would have been watching it. Like, I've watched the past two rounds games. I thought. Maybe it could be entertaining. The last week they kind of force fed it to us, but God, like DTR has to be the worst quarterback in the NFL. I don't even think it's. I don't know how they trotted him out there. Like Jameis, I don't care if she throws 50 pick sixes. He's more competent than DTR, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I was hoping that we'd maybe get Winston back in this game, maybe pull off some Winston magic and pull off the upset here. But fortunately, we won't be getting that in this game here between the Browns and the Ravens. We'll move it along here to the nightcap, 8 p.m. Eastern start time between the Cincinnati Bengals looking to keep their slim hopes alive of getting into the playoffs. They are visiting Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. Bengals laying a point on the road here with a total of 48.5 here, Sebastian. Anything for Bengals and Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is probably one of the bigger games of the weekend here. Steelers, assuming the Ravens win, playing, I know they're your Texans, but getting the 5th seed compared to the 6th seed is a big difference in the playoffs. They will either head to Houston if they secure the 5th seed with a win, or they will head to Baltimore for if they get the 6th seed there. So I know they play well against Baltimore, but Baltimore, just recently put it on them. So I think that favorable matchup would probably be Houston there. So, and then obviously Cincinnati's got to win to stay in. So Cincinnati side, starting with them, only a couple injuries right now. They have their practice report for today hasn't came back. You'll see me check my phone occasionally to see if anything pops up because now's about the time. Yeah. But Chase Brown is the big one. We saw him take the heroic effort, not only for his team, but for Denver plus 3.5 bettors. So we thought he injured himself on that play, picked up what they're calling a mild high ankle sprain. In my opinion, there's no such thing as far as a mild injury when we talk about a high ankle sprain, because even in mild cases, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to fully recover. Now, he didn't practice today. I believe I saw that he did not practice today, that he's not out there. I expect him to try to give it a go, but I do not think he's going to be able to do much of anything. It is not your typical ankle sprain where you roll your ankle. It is a much more stable joint, which means it requires a lot more force to injure. So a lot longer recovery timeline. Now, yes, we did see Patrick Mahomes play on this injury, but they play two entirely different positions. I mean, the demands of a quarterback from a mobility standpoint and taking hits standpoint is vastly different from a running back in the NFL, especially one that's become a workhorse. Really, really solid player from them, both out of the receiving realm and in the backfield. So, yeah, he may try to play, but look, guys, I think he's going to be very limited and high re-injury risk. So if they do if he is able to play and they loft any numbers, I'm going to be going as under. I know everyone thinks Patrick Mahomes, but again, quarterback position in Mahomes, he just is a little bit different with these injuries. He played through them before. Yeah. I think it'd be closer to something like Justin Herbert. We saw him try to play 1 week after and still a quarterback, but he re-injured his ankle, went down. They lost. All his unders hit. Something like that is probably closer to what we'll see. Their defensive tackle, Sheldon Rankins, he got put in the IR with an illness. Another guy who's been out for a long time. We don't really have the full story there. I don't know exactly what the illness is. Obviously hoping he's okay, but he's going to be out the rest of the season. And then Pittsburgh's getting healthy. And they need it because they're on a 3-game losing streak. They do not want to go to the playoffs on a 4-game losing streak. Their best cornerback, Joey Porter Jr., is full practice today, expected to be back. Justin Fields, full practice today, expected to be back. Roman Wilson, the guy, their rookie wide receiver who's got no burn because of a high ankle sprain and a hamstring injury, he had a full practice today and is set to return off the IR. So there's a good chance we could see Roman Wilson. And that wide receiver 2 slot is, I know Calvin Austin has done well, but that third wide receiver or that slot position, I think there's some targets available for Roman Wilson if he's able to do anything. And what a great matchup to come back to in this awful Cincinnati defense. Running back Jaylen Warren picked up a rib injury. He is limited in practice, but first practice of the week. The fact he's even out there is a good sign. And then Cole Holcomb is a guy who practiced for the first time this year, still on the PUP. physically unable to perform list. I don't expect Holcomb to be back, but maybe for the playoffs. They could never use enough linebackers there in Pittsburgh. So, I think this is a game where there's going to be some points. I'm curious where you're looking to kind of get an edge here between the Bengals and the Steelers.
So you mentioned the Chase Brown one. I 200% agree with you. If he is out there, I would look at the unders, which makes me kind of just pivot to taking Joe Burrow overs, right? Pass attempts, completions, yardage. I'm not sure who their backup running back then would be, right? Zach Moss has been gone for a while
Khalil
now.
Herbert.
Okay.
They brought him over from Chicago.
Yeah. So I still think it's Burrow. He's been an absolute terror. For the entirety of the season, honestly. Yeah. You mentioned the poorest defense of the Cincinnati Bengals. Even with that rib injury to Jalen Warren, I think this could be another big Najee week. Last 4 head-to-head meetings against the Bengals, Sebastian, 90 rushing yards, 99, 78, and then earlier this season, he had 75 on 16 carries. And he scored a touchdown against the Cincinnati Bengals in 4 straight head-to-head meetings here as well. So, how do you keep the Bengals offense off the field? Smash run, run the football here. So I think this could be another big Najee week here. Curious to see what the number does come out on for Najee, but I would look at Burrow overs, and then I think it feels like my favorite play here might just be Najee rushing yards to go over in this game here. So those would be the player press I'll be looking at.
That's a great point with Najee, because a lot of people, Jalen Warren's been coming on. He's been getting a little bit more touches, and I know a lot of people are kind of responding to that. Yeah. But I do think this is a Najee Harris game for the reasons you said. It's more of a between the tackles. Something I just want to throw out there as a nice little sprinkle potentially. We'll see what the number's at, but Justin Fields, anytime touchdown, this just feels like the week that they could get him involved again. When they were kind of rolling there, they were bringing him in short yardage situations, kind of that, not wildcat, but zone read type offense there. I could definitely see they've been struggling in the red zone lately, something to mix it up. He is fully practicing. So just a note, if it's a good enough number, anything above a 10 to 1, 15 to 1, something to sprinkle on to think about.
All right, let's keep it rolling here. We'll get over to the Sunday slate for the final week of the regular season. Let's get over to the New Orleans Saints. They are taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bucks win, and they, I believe, clinched the NFC South division, laying 13.5 points here at home with a total of 43.5 here. Sebastian, what are we looking at for Saints and Bucks?
Yeah, obviously, winning you're in, right? And I know the Washington game was so big for the Bucks. It was so big I've got a ton of futures on the Bucks to win the South and then Atlanta to miss the playoffs. So hoping that the Buccaneers can get this done against a very, very depleted New Orleans team. These are the ones I have information right now. Kendre Miller was knocked out of the game with concussion. We'll see, at this point in the season, it's really kind of 50-50 for concussions. That Thursday practice is key regarding their status. So we'll have to see on Kendre Miller. And then Jamel Dean for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a guy who's been in and out of the lineup a ton. He came in with a knee injury and he got knocked out of the game with one. So we'll see where he's at. Maybe they rest him because let's be honest. It's either going to be Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener. Yeah. I very likely doubt Carr is going to be back. They haven't officially ruled him out. They haven't officially put him in the IR, but they talked about a pretty severe fracture on his hand there. So I'd be very shocked. Alvin Kamara, I'd be shocked if he plays. Chris Olave, they had a chance last week, so maybe he plays. But, what's the point, especially if you have Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener out there? It's going to be tough to do anything, even though, this Tampa Bay secondary is, it can be taken advantage of. I just don't know if the Saints are the team that can do it. The other one I want to mention, safety Antoine Winfield. He picked up a knee injury earlier and kind of said he was going to be out several weeks and never told us what the injury was. But he's kind of right around being out for about a month. So there's a chance he could potentially get some burn, really just to kind of knock some rust off. Obviously a huge player for them. They just got back other safety, Jordan Whitehead. So if they can start shoring up that secondary before the playoffs, I think that'd be a big thing for them. But, I think this is one to watch to see guys like Carr, Kamara, and Olave. I would call them all doubtful right now, but we'll kind of see how the week progresses.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on those. I just feel like if those guys aren't able to go, this was something I did look at last week and Underdog Fantasy, our sponsor, does a fantastic job of giving these markets of first half projections. Baker Mayfield passing yards, Mike Evans receiving yards. Mentioned this, Mike Evans, I think 85 yards away from getting to the 1,000 a mark to continue that streak in his career. So I think that he definitely gets there in this game. I think just feed him early. Then if they're up by, I don't know, 2-3 touchdowns at the half, you start maybe seeing a heavy dose of Bucky Irving at that point as well. So the game script is really there for the Bucs in this game, especially being at home against the New Orleans Saints, like Sebastian mentioned, with the team that is depleted right now with all the injuries that they are dealing with. Anything else for Saints Bucs?
Just another guy I want to throw out there because I like to look for these situations, especially in these Week 18 games where things get a little wacky. Sean Tucker. I don't know if you're gonna find any lines on him, but if they do offer the anytime touchdown, he is kind of that guy where we saw it against Carolina. He's gonna be the guy to get some work, and he runs really hard. So he's definitely a guy who runs prideful. So, later in the game, if they do start resting some starters, or they're just, the spread's 13.5. Like, I expect them to be playing with a large lead, just like they did against Carolina last week. He's a guy that you can look for in the anytime touchdown market as well. Again, I want to see what the number they put him at, but just someone to keep an eye on as far as, a little bit of a dart throw, if that's kind of your flavor.
14 rush attempts, 136 yards he had earlier this season against the New Orleans Saints. He did record a touchdown in that game as well. So we could maybe see him, like Sebastian mentioned, if this game does get out of hand for the Saints, that the backups do come in for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this matchup. All right, before we get over to the next game here on the Week 18 schedule, I mentioned Underdog Fantasy, man, just does a fantastic job. They have so many different options when it comes to their betting, their biggest menu of all sports. Honestly, you can win up to 1,000x with Underdog streaks. Underdog is always making it easier to win with profit boost and gimme pick'ems. NFL, college football, college basketball, MMA, NASCAR, NBA, so much more. It can now use specials and boost on all flex entries as well. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first time deposit offer up to 1,000 in bonus cash. That's underdogfantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Next game on the schedule we want to get into is going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. They are going to be taking on the Denver Broncos in this game. Currently looking at the lines for this game, I am seeing that the Broncos are an 11-point home favorite with a total of 40 here, Sebastian. Of course, nothing to play for at all for the Kansas City Chiefs, but everything to play for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, so really in this one, it's really just the one right now I want to talk about is Isaiah Pacheco, who's probably not going to be out there today or this week, but for the playoffs, he should be ready to go. He picked up a rib injury. Andy Reid said that he'll be good to go for the playoffs. I don't expect many, if any, starters to be playing in this game for Kansas City. So I just wanted to give the update for, when we think about futures and things down the line and stuff like that. We'll see what his role is. I think that's an interesting conversation of like Kareem Hunt seems to still kind of be getting a lot of the carries. It's definitely not back to Pacheco's role. So we'll see, that's a whole different question, but the fact that he should be healthy for the playoffs is a good sign for Kansas City.
All right. Anything for the Denver side of things?
Nope. Not yet, at least. But yeah, it looks like they're coming in mostly clean bill of health.
All right. I will mention this, and I'll talk about this more as we progress through the week for the Propcast. But Cortland Sutton, I believe it was 86. Let me double check here on how many yards he needs to unlock a contract incentive. Let's see here. 82 yards for 500,000.
Yeah, he's going up against the Kansas City Chiefs defense their secondary has been kind of depleted with injuries all year. So, maybe a unit that you wouldn't think of getting some rest, but I could definitely see them, having a bunch of backups back there. So just Cortland Sutton, he can beat, regular starters. So I'm sure you'll have a field day with some backups.
Yep. All right. Let's keep it moving here. Let me get back to my screen here. We'll get over to the LA Chargers. They are taking on the Raiders in this game. Screen keeps going out on me here. The lines in this game: Chargers a 5.5-point road favorite here with a total of 41.5. Sebastian, anything for Chargers Raiders?
Yeah, Chargers with the motivation to, if they win and Pittsburgh loses, then they get the 5th seed instead of the 6th seed, right? With Denver losing, last week, they're kind of locked into at least the 6th seed. So it's just between them and Pittsburgh. So some motivation. A position that's been really kind of a vulnerability for them this year has been the safety position, because safety Alohi Gilman went off early onto the IR. And then his backup, Elijah Molden, who's been playing well, he broke his fibula. He's done for the year. So the good news, not for him, unfortunately, but for the team, is that safety Alohi Gilman could start practicing this week. So I don't know about, playing. I would kind of be shocked if they roll him out here against the Raiders and Aiden O'Connell. But as far as for them in the playoffs, that's going to be a huge boost to play outside. Derwin James is a guy who loves to play in the box. It's where he's best utilized. So they need someone back there to cover center field. And Gilman is the starter, and he's a very good safety in this league. But, the fact that they were almost going to be on safety number 3, I think they brought Tony Jefferson out of retirement, Marcus May, some really guys that you just can't trust back there. So big news for them if Gilman's able to go. So one to definitely watch. I don't expect him this week. So, if you want to take a flyer on a guy like Trey Tucker as a guy that they like to throw the ball deep to in Las Vegas, a couple of those, maybe some nice ladder potentials, because you're going to have some backup safeties playing in the middle of the field. But I think really it's just bigger. The Chargers are going to get a little bit of boost for the playoffs. On the other side, Amir Abdullah, I think, I believe this is someone we talked about last week. But he had a career day. I mean, absolutely went off for the Raiders. And then he unfortunately left the game with a foot injury. Haven't got a ton of updates where that's at. Chargers are a decent run defense, but obviously him out of the backfield all season has been, a really profitable angle in his receiving yards. So something to watch for. They've got some beat up linebackers with the Chargers there. So we'll see. It would be great if he could play, but, he wasn't able to return to the game. So definitely no guarantees for Amir Abdullah. One to watch this week.
Yeah, big game last week against the Saints. 115 rushing yards on 20 attempts, 5.8 yards per carry. Also had 3 receptions on 4 targets for 32 receiving yards. He's had at least 30 receiving yards in 3 straight games here, 32, 47 against the Jags. He had 58 against the Atlanta Falcons here. So definitely keep an eye out if Amir Abdullah will be a go this week against the Chargers. Next game on the schedule here, we'll get over to the Miami Dolphins. They are taking on the Jets this week. Dolphins laying a point on the road here with a total of 39.5. Another team that's still alive are the Dolphins as far as playoff implications here, Sebastian. But what are we looking at for Dolphins Jets?
Yeah, I know all this talk about the Bengals, but I mean, the Dolphins are very alive, because if the Broncos lose, it defaults to the Dolphins, not the Bengals. So, very interesting game here. This is a line that we'll talk about in a second. Look, quarterback Tua Tagovailoa, very questionable for this game. I don't give a shit who's back there. I don't understand how the Miami Dolphins are only laying 1 on the road against the Jets. That's been just awful. But anyway, so look, Tua, I talked about him. He picked up a hip injury against your Texans. What was that, week 15?
Yep.
Then he played through it, got hit again against San Francisco, wasn't able to play last week. McDaniel said it was a safety concern as far as him not having the mobility to move out of the pocket, get away from some of those hits. So he's very kind of eerie about his status for this week. No real confirmation either way. So this is going to be one we have to watch practice reports. I don't expect him to practice Wednesday. It's going to be Thursday and Friday. That's going to really tell the story here. But Snoop Honley looked competent after a little bit of a shaky start, and definitely he sucked in the beginning of the year. He looks a lot more competent, and he was making some nice throws to Tyreek Hill while Denzel Ward was still in the game. So it's not like it's a matchup that is too devastating. And some other things I like for Miami here is they're optimistic to get back Jalen Waddle this week. He had a minor knee injury. He missed 2 games. They're expecting him to be back. And on the other side, Sauce Gardner came in, played through a hamstring injury, but unfortunately re-injured his hamstring. I'd say there's really very unlikely he gives it a go this week. Again, nothing to play for. Why injure yourself if you're already injured? So you don't have Sauce Gardner. You're getting back Jalen Waddle. The only bad news is left tackle Teron Armstead. He's been battling a knee injury for weeks. I would imagine he's going to need some type of surgery in the offseason. He got knocked out of the game because of a re-aggravation. So we'll see with him. I mean, there's been weeks where he hasn't practiced and he's played. There's been weeks where he practices and then he gets downgraded. So he's kind of a big question mark, but they've kind of been dealing with it all season. Again, this Jets defense is not what we thought it was going to be. So, whether Tua's in the game or not, I like a lot of the Dolphin stuff. I would say if it's Snoop Huntley, Jonnu Smith is a guy that he likes. His rushing was a prop that was an easy prop to play last week. He did pick up a touchdown with that too. I think the Jets, you can attack them on the ground. So I'm sure Devon A-Chain is going to have a big day then if they're going to rely on him. So I just think that the Dolphins, you have to tweak the game plan depending on who's at quarterback, but I really like them in this matchup against the Jets.
Yeah, you nailed it. I did play Huntley's rushing yards last week. That was got there rather easily, especially in the second half of that game. But I think that's something that if he is under center this week, that will be something I will definitely be keeping my eye on for sure here for Snoop Huntley against the New York Jets. Before we get over to the game of the week, maybe of the season, let me tell everyone about our friends over at MyBookie.ag. Hey, MyBookie.ag has been around SGPN for years. They have props for every game, the live dealer casino there as well. They even have a new early cash out option that's available as well on MyBookie.ag. Head to MyBookie.ag, promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit match up to $1,000. Plus, they'll throw in a $10 casino chip for you as well. That's MyBookie.ag, promo code SGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's prop partner Rhythm is the #1 AI-powered back sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money line, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard, or have Rhythm build a model for you. Now you can track props in the Rhythm app, NFL picks, NFL props, college football, college basketball, NBA, Rhythm. Honestly, they have it all. So claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, last game of the night for all the marbles in the NFC. We've got the Minnesota Vikings. They are going to be visiting the Detroit Lions. Lions laying 2.5 points in this game with a total of 57, the biggest total by far this season as far as a total goes, Sebastian. But what a way to cap off the NFL regular season. NFC North up for grabs, the #1 seed up for grabs. What are we looking at for Vikings and Lions?
Jeez, well, I mean, that total's huge. I mean, it makes sense, but wow. But yeah, just a quick shout out to the Lions, man. Dan Campbell, everyone thought he was an idiot. Let's be honest. Those first couple of years, they just thought he was a big Neanderthal getting in there, having no idea what he was doing. But he kind of executed his game plan last night flawlessly. He got the revenge W. He played all of his starters. There was no major injuries, and his defense started off getting shredded. They played a respectable second half with a couple turnovers and really only held them to 6 points in the fourth quarter. That came at really, really late in garbage time. So shout out to Dan Campbell. It was very fun to watch. I don't know if I'd be feeling the same way if I was a Lions fan, but as just an NFL fan, that was a super entertaining game. And made a good amount of money on some ladders. So that was a fun game for bettors and NFL fans. For this game, really the biggest thing is, running back Aaron Jones. Now, he was out of the game, and it was to the point where that last drive where they had to ice the game against the Packers to pick up that last first down, he was not out there. Typically, it's like, oh shit, like that's a big deal. But it seems like they were just holding him out for precautionary reasons, just a quad contusion, which is a fancy word for a bruise. So, it's not like a tiny bruise, I'm sure. I'm sure he's got to work through it a little bit. But all expectation is he's going to be fine. He's going to practice this week. He's even good to go. And I would agree based on the diagnosis. If it was a quad strain, we're talking about something completely different. But the contusion aspect, he should be good to go. Mostly all guys play through this. Aaron Jones, this is a huge game. If you win this game, you get off the next week and you're in the second round of the playoffs. So massive game. The only other thing I have to mention, which I don't have any concrete info on this yet, but, Lions got back linebacker Jalen Reeves-Maybin last week. There's potential talks about Alex Anzalone potentially being able to make a return. He had a fractured elbow, forearm or something like that. Fractures typically take, 3 to 4 weeks. They said 4 to 6 weeks. We're kind of at that mark. So we'll see if they want to hold him out for the playoffs or if they want to bring him back for this week. So that's the only one I would really want to watch because he makes a huge difference. He really does. Those linebackers, I know the defensive line has been beat up, but those linebackers were making up for those injuries earlier in the season. And when he went down, he was the leader of that defense. So at least at the linebacker level, that front seven level. So that's one I would keep an eye on because for me, that's a big enough defensive injury that would flip, a little bit into the Lions' favor there.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Lions have just been decimated by injuries, throughout the season, especially on that defensive line. We've talked a lot about throughout the year. Justin Jefferson has been one guy that has dominated, especially at Ford Field in his career. Just trying to pull up those numbers here for Justin Jefferson against the Detroit Lions. I think so 4 games in his career against the Lions. He's had at least 9 receptions in all 4 games, 11 receptions at least in 3 of the 4 games. And I'm just going to quickly read off the yardage here for you, Sebastian. 133, 182, 223, and 192 for Justin Jefferson against the Detroit Lions in Ford Field. So could be another big game for Mr. Justin Jefferson. The total is indicating we will see points. So if you are betting maybe overs on props, this game might just be it for you to do that here. But definitely looking forward to this one on Sunday night. I think that's going to do it here, Sebastian. I know we talked about the games that have, at least some type of playoff implications, meaningful games here. But anything else across the NFL as far as injuries go that you want to mention that we should probably keep our eye on?
Yeah, really quick before that, just something on, you mentioned it, but this Minnesota-Detroit game might just be where you can probably get it right by just clicking on everybody's overs. But, Jalen Naylor is an interesting guy. I was able to ride the Ricky Pearsall ladder last night. He kind of plays in a little bit of a similar role there in the slot. Also, George Kittle had himself a game, so TJ Hawkinson. So, there are some opportunities against Detroit, but the same way with Minnesota, they've been giving up yards all game. So whether you want to go Jared Goff or try to pinpoint the guy who's going to have a game, I think Goff passing yards is probably just an easier way to get after that, in a game that has a pretty historically high total. So, but some other injuries I just wanted to mention. There's only a couple, but Brock Purdy, we saw him go out of the game last night. Josh Dobbs came in and led that kind of last touchdown drive. He's got some elbow inflammation. He basically kind of has some nerve irritation, lost some feeling in his hand. This isn't, unless there's a really major injury associated with it, this itself is not too concerning. They kind of already came out and said, look, he's probably not going to play week 18, which I fully expect him not to. But, this isn't something concerning. Originally, when I first thought of it, he had to have reconstructive surgery on that UCL ligament. So not Tommy John's, but they did do a little bit of the I can't remember if it was a repair or reconstruction, but one of those where the opposite of the Tommy John surgery. So you do have you ask yourself some questions about, sometimes they have to take the nerve and put it in a different position. Is that affecting it? But it sounds like everything coming out of San Francisco right now is it's not anything, threatening for next season or anything. So he should be fine. Just don't expect him next week. And then in the same game, Trey Benson just got put on the IR, and James Conner has been aggravated. He's knee injury again. So I don't know if it's, a demercado at that point or how far down you want to go down that depth chart there. But there's going to be a lot of backups in that game just purely by injury for that one. Other than that, I think that is pretty much it. A lot of the injuries, at least the big ones, were for the games that do matter because let's be honest, everything else is just a crapshoot.
Yeah, Michael Carter was that guy last week for the Arizona Cardinals. 13 carries, 70 yards, 5.4 yards per carry there. So, I look, and this is a great reminder. We say this every single week, but I think when we're going into the final week of the regular season, you probably want to take some time out of your schedule if you are a serious bettor. And number one, of course, listen to this episode podcast, but listen to the press conference of some of these coaches and what they're saying, because you're going to see starters getting pulled, backups coming in, maybe even up until game day. So I think, you at least for the incentive one, and we'll talk about that more on the Propcast later this week, but some of these other ones, like we've just talked about on this episode, keep your eyes and ears open. You want to have those notifications on for these guys that are probably going to be playing maybe a half, sitting out the second half, these backups coming in. So this is a week to capitalize, but again, you got to be smart about it at the same time as well.
Yeah. To your point, like, coaching tendencies, you can go back to preseason and things like that. Like Sean McVay comes to mind, a guy who never plays anybody in the preseason. So yes, they secured the NFC West. They technically could play for some seeding. If Tampa Bay loses, they could get the number 3 seed at this point, or maybe they're ahead of Tampa Bay, but there's some type of seeding potential there. But, the number opened at Seattle -3. I jumped on it immediately because I don't expect McVay to throw Stafford out there just with his injury history and just how much he means to the team there. So that's just stuff like that where, you really got to pay attention to what the coaches are saying and then look at like what they've done in the past situation. So I think that's a great point. Week 18 can be very fun, but definitely not one where you want to be blowing all your units on because it's going to be wacky.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, you want to save your bullets for the playoffs, of course, and we'll be here for that up until the Super Bowl, of course, as well. All right, that's going to put a cap in it. Nice and sweet here. I'm looking forward to the football this weekend, especially in the National Football League. Should be a lot of fun. Some profitable angles for sure. But Sebastian, anything else you want to mention, my man, before we get out of here?
No, hey, we appreciate you guys listening all year. Be safe, have a happy time, but have a little fun. Watch the ball drop. Hopefully we'll see. Last year it was when Ohio State was missing a kick and the ball dropped. So maybe we can get an Ashton Genty walk-off touchdown in overtime or something this year. So we'll see.
Yeah, 100%. Again, if you're going to be out there, just be safe. I've said this on other pods as well. Be smart. If you need to, call an Uber, call a Lyft. You don't need to be driving if you are going to be partaking in alcohol, of course. But yeah, like Sebastian mentioned, appreciate everybody that's listened to us throughout this year. This was a new concept that we wanted to introduce this year, and I think we've had success doing that for sure. So if you have any more feedback that you want for this episode, tweet at us. You can tweet at Sebastian at the DGen Doc. You can tweet at me as well at SportsNerd824 or the Propcast SGPN on Twitter as well. But appreciate all the support over this course of the season. And of course, we're not done quite yet. All right, we'll be back next week talking about the NFL playoffs for a wild card weekend. So definitely looking forward to it. And then I'm sure throughout of it, we'll get more of Giants banter from Sebastian and where they end up with their draft pick. Yeah. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Have a happy new year. Be safe out there, but always remember that you want to let it ride.